So how did the Homeschool Counseling Network come to be? Stay tuned to learn more.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.
Hi, I'm Kimberly, a licensed professional counselor of over 20 years and a homeschooling mom for 5 of those years. I am also the founder and CEO of the Homeschool Counseling Network. Basically, the Homeschool Counseling Network is a resource website where you can find all types of professionals who are here to help support you along the way in your homeschooling journey. To learn more about what the Homeschooling Counseling Network can do for you, I'll put a card up here with our trailer video, and I'm going to discuss more of how the Homeschool Counseling Network can benefit you in your homeschool and videos to come. So make sure you click the like and subscribe button. So, how did the Homeschool Counseling Network come to be? Well, today's video is going to be a little bit about my story and background. Well, I've been a licensed professional counselor for over 20 years in 2 states, in Texas and first in Georgia. I have been a mom for 11 of those years now and a homeschooling mom for 5 of those years. And if you had asked me several years ago if I was going to be a homeschooling mom, I would say no, absolutely not. It was not even remotely on my radar. In fact, when I first started out in counseling, I worked in several different environments, very different from what I'm doing now. Initially, I worked in my pre-mommy life, before I was even a homeschool mommy. I worked in juvenile justice. I worked in public education as a guidance counselor. I worked in psychiatric hospitals. And then finally, I launched my own private practice. 3 years into my private practice, we learned we were going to be parents, and we relocated from Georgia to Texas, our new home. And during that time, I'll be honest, for my personal story, it took us a little while to have our son. So I saw that sweet face and said, oh, I can't leave him. And I was very fortunate enough to be able to stay home with him. That is a luxury that many do not have. But still, at that time, when our son was born in 2013, if you had asked me if I was going to be a homeschool mom, I would have said, no way. It's not going to happen. I'm not equipped. I can't be a teacher. I don't have a background in education. Forget the fact that I would teach this child to walk and teach this child to talk and teach this child how to hold a spoon. And that God was going to give me a few challenges along the way to show me that even though I had plans, He had bigger plans for me. So once we settled in Texas with our beautiful 2-month-old, I just assumed that I would automatically go back into private practice or into the public service or helping profession that I'd known. That's all I had known at that time, either starting a private practice from scratch again or working for someone else, which I did explore a couple of those opportunities. But as I said before, those were my plans. And God has a way of saying, nah, I have something else in store for you. So it turns out I became a stay-at-home mom and eventually a homeschool mom. If you want to learn more about my story as how I first became a homeschool mom, and I don't recommend anyone do it this way, where you enroll your child in kindergarten or first grade, I think it was at the time, and then panic and pull them out just a few weeks before. I don't recommend you do that. Take your time with it. But if you want to learn more about that story and my background, I'm going to put some cards below to some videos that I have on my other channel and on my other website. It's onlyhomeschooling.com. That lets you know my sort of roundabout way of how I became a homeschool mom. But during my seasons of homeschooling, it was actually during my first year as a homeschool mom. We were homeschoolers pre-pandemic. But when the world shut down in 2020, everybody became a homeschooler pretty much then. And I was one of a few of my friends and this was friends who had kids in public school, this was friends who had kids in private school, who reached out to me and were like, help, what do we do? So sort of out of the habit of pulling together resources and materials and being the helper that I am, I just sort of started helping people. and giving out information and giving out advice and sort of encouraging people because, well, that's just what I do. It's just what I do, and it's what I know. That began to grow into a blog when we were stuck and couldn't see people much anymore. And then the blog sort of grew into, and the blog was at itsonlyhomeschooling.com. Then that blog began to grow into a podcast very quickly. It's funny how I got into a podcast. I hadn't intended on becoming a podcaster, but there's people in life who they go to the steps of the pool and sort of slowly get used to the water and step in. And then there's people who go to the diving board and they just jump straight in to get that cold rush over and get used to it. I'm the third type, where you go really far back and you take a running leap and you cannonball straight into the pool, but you forget to look for water. I don't recommend you do that either. It's just what I do. I sort of jump into something, get a wild idea in my head, and just figure it out as I go. That is my process. It's not one that I recommend, but it works for me. I make a lot of mistakes along the way, and I learn from them as I go. But back to how the Homeschooling Network came to be. It started off with It's Only Homeschooling, my blog, my podcast. From It's Only Homeschooling, it started with an idea of I wanted to teach my homeschool child about character ed, which is a requirement in my home state here of Texas. To teach, in addition to other subjects, we have to teach a course in good citizenship. Well, for us as a family, that meant going a little bit deeper. We are a family of faith, and so I felt that simply by teaching my son this, it was something deeper than a curriculum, something deeper than a course. I felt it had to be a life skill. Out of that, we've always been a volunteering family, and we've served at our church. But out of that, I wanted my son to really connect with what we were learning in a character curriculum to doing it in real life. And out of that came the Salt and Light Serve Spotlight, my very first podcast. And pretty much this podcast is focused on individuals, businesses, or people in the community here, local to DFW and across the globe, who are doing their best in some way or form to make the world and their community a better place by embodying salt and light, which means pretty much seasoning our words and actions and deeds so that we have others thirst for the knowledge of Christ. It means fulfilling the Great Commission. So that is what that podcast focused on. I'm a reader, an avid reader. I love to read books. Books are my favorite, all the books, always. That gave birth to my next podcast, the Shelf Indulgence Book Chats, where it began where I had come across some homeschool mommy authors, and I was like, oh, I want to read this book, and oh, this was a great book, and other people need to know about this book. So that led to me interviewing several homeschool moms, as you'll see from different episodes of the show, and I'll put some links in the description box below. For me interviewing several of these homeschooling moms about the wonderful, encouraging books and very informative books that they have written that have helped me in my homeschooling journey. So I thought that would be something to share with you and to help lift up these wonderful, wonderful authors who are in turn pouring into the homeschooling community. So we're up to now a year into the website. Okay, no, 2 years into the website, 2 podcasts in, and I now have a 5th grader. I came across a very dear friend, and in homeschooling, we are a giant village. We tend to meet other people. So I came across a very dear friend, Natalie Mack from the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, the HSLDA, who reached out to me, and we talked about collaborating a little bit. And Natalie poured into me. I'll put some links in the description box below so you can learn more about Natalie. And I'll put a card to her beautiful, beautiful TED Talk up here, where she talks about the beauty and the benefit of homeschooling. She poured into me and encouraged me to kind of go back to my counseling roots, so to speak, as if to say, hey, here is a need in the world. Would you like to do something about it? And that got me thinking, and I prayed over it, and she prayed over me as I prayed over it, and several of my other wonderful homeschooling mommy friends, including CJ from homeschooling through high school, and Peggy Ployer, and several of my other from Sped Homeschool of my other friends also prayed over me, and Terry McKee from 35 Tribe. And It's All Jesus Ministries poured over me as I pursued this goal, I guess, this newfound path. As a very, very dear friend of mine, Jody from Serve Outreach, always says to me, and I'll put a card to the link of her interview from the Salt and Light Serve Spotlight, God is a gentleman. If he leads you to it, he will see you through it. Out of that came the idea for the Homeschool Counseling Network. What I began to see in interacting with various different groups and various different friends in the homeschooling community was that there is a little bit of a gap between professionals and homeschooling families. As a seasoned counselor, family, friends, anyone, whether they're homeschoolers or not, they have tended to go to the person they know that is in the helping field to look for recommendations when they are searching for a professional, whether that professional works in education or in tutoring or in mental health or in counseling. If they are looking for someone to help them, and I've done the same thing, to help them on their homeschooling journey or on their parenting journey, they tend to go to someone they trust for recommendations. That is one of the biggest ways we pretty much make connections with professionals. So I wanted the Homeschool Counseling Network to sort of be that friend for the homeschooling community at large, if you will. The Homeschool Counseling Network was created to bridge that gap between professionals in these different areas of education and tutoring and counseling and mental health and therapy and even treatment centers and professional coaching and testing and assessment, all of the different needs that homeschoolers have. I wanted you to be able to come to one place and find it in one place, all of these different resources from professionals all across the United States. The Homeschooling Counseling Network was born. If you know anything about me from videos from my first channel and my first website, it's onlyhomeschooling.com, you know that community outreach and service is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. So this is one more gift that I wanted to give to the homeschooling community. All of the resources at the Homeschool Counseling Network are free. That is the purpose of it. I understand, and I am as well one of those homeschooling families, like many, where you are single income. And I wanted all of the resources here to be free to you. Finding clinicians and professionals who are equipped and have the skills and the knowledge and the understanding of what it means to work with the special circumstances that can sometimes come along with being a homeschooling family can be a little bit of a struggle. You're already facing the challenge that whatever your challenge may be that you're facing, for which you need the services. Going that extra step of having to find that clinician who specializes in what you need to have your needs met is another burden. So the goal with the creation of this website and this YouTube channel, and coming very soon, a podcast, was to help do a little bit of that legwork for you to ease that burden. So as our network grows, I hope that you will find that your needs are going to be met with the professionals that we have listed here as part of our network. We also have additional resources, blog posts that come out 2 to 3 times a week. We have weekly vlog posts that are going to be coming out very soon, and hopefully within the next couple of months, and a Homeschool Counseling Network podcast where we are going to interview professionals in all of the different areas that we have our resource lists in. What are we going to talk with them about? Well, that's what I want to talk with you about, our audience. What are questions that you have that you would like to ask a licensed professional counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a play therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a psychologist, a professional tutor, or an educator? Or what would you like to ask a life coach or a professional coach, or someone who does psychological assessment or testing when it comes to giftedness or learning disorders? What are the questions that if you had this person sitting right here in front of you that you would love to have them answer? Bottom line, our goal here at the Homeschool Counseling Network is service. Service to you, our audience, the homeschooling community of which I am also a member. I kind of have one foot in both camps. I have one foot in the counseling camp and one foot in the homeschooling mom camp. And believe me, there is strength in having that village. There is no greater comfort than community. We want to have you as part of our community. So click the like and subscribe button and come be a part of our village. We're glad you're here.